Donald Trump currently enjoys a 2% lead in polls as he holds 46.7% of the vote against Joe Biden, who holds just 44.7%. That is according to RCP's polling averages. But in 2020, if you look at it, Joe Biden won the popular vote by 4.5 points and was projected to win by at least 7 according to polling aggregates. Furthermore, Trump has led ever since October of last year, which is remarkably concerning for the Biden campaign, as they hope to win re-election. But the election is not decided by the popular vote, but rather in the Electoral College. In today's video, I will be taking a look at who will win the presidential election as of today. And let's start filling up the map. For Joe Biden's safe states here, we have Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, the District of Columbia, Maryland, Delaware, Connecticut, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and I think that is pretty much it. While for Donald Trump, we have the states of Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, the Dakotas, the state of Montana, Nebraska's at-large vote, the 1st and 3rd congressional district, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, and Missouri. Now let's move forward with the likely states. So starting off with Joe Biden's likely states, first off the states of Colorado and New Mexico. Both of these states voted for Joe Biden by double digits, and although the margins in both these states I do believe will shrink, I still believe that Biden will win both of these states. Colorado is trending towards the Democratic Party. If you just look at the trends here, you can see there's no way Trump will end up winning the state. The most populated area around Denver, as well as Colorado Springs, El Paso County, trended 12 points in favor of Joe Biden. Now, if you look at the state of New Mexico, the trends aren't nearly as significant, but we still see that Bernalillo County, which is about a third of the state's population, trended heavily towards Joe Biden. And although the rural areas will certainly offset some of those trends, I still believe Joe Biden will win both of these states. Furthermore, in the state of Virginia, we will also see a similar story. We see that in 2020, some of these areas, especially the Washington, D.C. suburbs around Alexandria, the Fairfax region, as well as Loudoun County, here all trended heavily towards Joe Biden. And although there were some Republican counties here in the rural regions that trended towards the Republicans, that will nearly enough be able to give Republicans the state, and also in the likely Democratic column. New Jersey, obviously, in the likely Democratic column. I don't believe Biden will win by more than 12 points, though I think he'll still win on the verge of that. In the state of New York here, I do believe this might go down under 12% because of the fact how close it was in the governor's race in 2022. Lee Zeldin made this race within 8. I don't believe that Trump could make it that competitive. However, I do believe New York at this moment in time will be in the likely Democratic column rather than the safe column. In the state of Illinois, a similar story to New Jersey and New York. I do believe Biden will win probably by double digits, but not necessarily by a safe margin. I'm going to have to put it in the likely margin here, about 11 to 12 points in favor of Joe Biden. Now, Maine's 1st district here, I'm still going to put it in the safe category. And for Maine's at-large vote, I'm going to put it as likely. I think that Joe Biden will win the state by 5 or 6 points because of the fact that the 1st district containing Portland is just too liberal for a Republican to flip. But the 2nd district is going to look much better for the Republicans, as this rural area of the state is pretty much the 2nd district, while Portland and most of the liberal counties are components of the 1st district. Now we're going to go back to Donald Trump's likely states here. First off, in South Carolina and Alaska. Both of these states here are going to be likely. I do believe Donald Trump will do comparatively quite similar as to his performance back in 2020. Both of these states will probably vote for Donald Trump by double digits, but not by safe margins. Now going next to the state of Florida here. We see that one of the biggest problems for Democrats here is pretty much the Hispanic vote. Miami-Dade County trended 22 points in favor of Donald Trump in 2020, though he did not win the county. Marco Rubio and I believe Ron DeSantis both won this county back in 2022. Republicans don't need to win the county, they just need to make it within about 20 points, and that's certainly going to happen. Democrats have made some inroads in the Tampa area, especially in Duval, which is right around Jacksonville. However, that would not be enough for Democrats to end up winning the state. Republicans have made significant inroads. The panhandle is just too red, And without Democrats getting a substantial vote pocket in Miami-Dade, the math just does not work out for Democrats in the state of Florida, and I do believe that Trump will win the state by at least 7-8 points in 2020. Going to the state of Texas. Texas has a very opposite dynamic from the state of Florida. It has consistently been trending Democrat over the last 20 years or so. Now, Trump won the state by 5.6 points, which seems like a pretty solid margin, but not the best for a state that was previously pretty much a ruby red state. Now, if you look at the trends here, you might be mistaken thinking that Donald Trump did quite well compared to his 2016 performance. However, some of these areas where Trump overperformed the most were Hispanic counties with relatively small populations. The large 4 areas in the state is around Houston. Harris County itself is about 14% of the state's population. The Austin region, the San Antonio region, as well as the Fort Worth, Dallas County type of region. Now, all 4 of those areas, if you look closely, trended to the Democratic Party in 2020. Now, one of the big problems for the Democrats here is the Hispanic vote. In 2016, Hillary Clinton did remarkably well with some of those Hispanic counties. For example, she was able to win all those counties by reliably large margins, winning about 70% to 80% of the vote in most of those counties. However, Joe Biden did remarkably poorly, not even cracking 60% of the vote in most of these regions. Furthermore, Trump was able to run up the numbers in some of these rural counties, which pretty much upsetted most of the gains Democrats made in the more suburban regions of the state. Now, you might look at the map and say, well, Democrats have a lot of vote in areas like Dallas, in Houston, or in Austin, or something like San Antonio. They have a lot of vote, but they're not blue enough for Democrats to win. Also, these small rural counties, they might seem small in terms of population, but there's about 200 of these rural counties across the state. That is a lot of circles if you look at this, and ultimately, Democrats ended up losing the state of Texas, which I expect they will do again in 2024. Now going to Iowa and Ohio. Both of these states here voted for Donald Trump by 8 points in 2020. Although earlier in the night in 2020, we saw that perhaps Joe Biden was going to make inroads. Turns out he did not. He had pretty much the same performance as Hillary Clinton did, which is not super good. Barack Obama won about half of the counties in the state of Iowa. Joe Biden only carried 6. And that's a really big problem because of the relatively white nature of both of these states. White working class voters in the state largely backed Trump, even if they did back Obama back in 2012. Now we see that there are 6 blue counties in the state because of the fact that Democrats, they are generally doing quite well in the cities, where Republicans, they are doing very well in the rural regions. However, the state is just overly rural for Democrats to win. Now going to the state of Ohio. The big problem for Democrats here is again the white working class areas, specifically a county like Mahoning. Even Hillary Clinton was able to win the county back in 2016, but in 2020, Joe Biden actually lost the county against Donald Trump. And we look at a county like Lorain County, a county like Lake County. These were easy Obama counties back in 2012 and 2008 especially, but these are areas that have since trended towards Republicans by heavy margins. Another concern for Democrats is the rural areas. Despite the fact that Trump did worse in 2020 compared to 2016, you can see that the rural areas of the state further ran up their numbers for Donald Trump. Trump got more than 70% of the vote in most of the rural areas in the state of Ohio. While if you look at the 2008 or 2012 numbers, Obama got about 40% of the vote in those regions. Although Republicans still won them, they did not obliterate Obama in 2008 or 2012 as opposed to in 2020 where Joe Biden got blown out of the water. That's not to say that Democrats don't have some areas of improvement. Delaware County and Hamilton County are 2 great examples of suburban/exurban counties, as well as some of the urban regions trending towards Democrats, but that's certainly not enough to win the state. So I'm going to fill in both these states as likely Republican states. Finally, Maine's 2nd Congressional District. Maine's 2nd District, as I have previously demonstrated, is remarkably red. Donald Trump did very well in the district, and he carried the district by about 7 in 2020. In 2024, I don't expect anything different. If anything, Trump will probably improve his margin off of 2020. Next, going to the state of Nevada. If you look at the state of Nevada here, Joe Biden won the state against Trump by 2.4% in 2020, the identical margin to 2016. But if you look at the polling, not a single poll shows that Donald Trump is behind Joe Biden. Biden is trailing Trump in virtually every poll, and in fact, he is not even tied in any of these. And a lot of that is due to the Israel war that is happening right now, the Israel-Hamas war. Many younger voters, as well as the Arab American population, disapprove of Joe Biden for that reason, and as a result, Biden is just not polling well in the state, relatively concerning considering this was a Clinton state back in 2016. If he's unable to pull it off, it will be looking pretty bleak for Joe Biden for the rest of the map. I do have this in the lean Republican column because of the polling and just because of the trends. Now, going to the state of Arizona, this is a very different story. If you just go to the state of Arizona in the polling, this is a state that's trending more towards Joe Biden. However, similarly in the state of Arizona, we see that Joe Biden is trailing in the polls according to, again, virtually every single poll. Now, Democrats do have some hope here because of the trends. Both Maricopa County and Pima County trended 5 points towards Joe Biden back in 2020. That's because there's a lot of moderate Republicans who just could not stand Trump and would rather have Joe Biden in office than Donald Trump. Furthermore, McCain's influence in the state probably ended up hurting Trump, enough so for him to lose the state. However, again, many of these voters, moderates, are not too happy with Biden's handling of a lot of issues. And again, the younger population, which is prominent in the state of Arizona, they're disapproving and resenting Joe Biden's handling again of the Israeli war. And that is a big problem for Biden. If he is able to recover by election day in 2024, then he's fine. But as of right now, just the data isn't there, and the numbers isn't there for Biden to end up winning the state of Arizona. Now going to the state of Georgia, a state where Joe Biden is performing even worse in the polling. You can see that Joe Biden is down by up to 7 points in some of the polling here, actually up to 9 points in this particular poll, and has not been leading in a single poll in the state. Now, this state is trending even more Democratic in a short period of time. We see that the Atlanta region is really the Democratic area of the state. This is the Democratic vote pocket. We see that Fulton County and DeKalb County, both these counties combined, netted Joe Biden about 500,000 votes in it itself, and we see that a lot of these areas around the Atlanta region have trended significantly towards Joe Biden. We see that a lot of these counties, for example, Cobb County, Gwinnett County, as well as Newton County, all of these counties, I believe Newton County actually, all three of these counties voted for Hillary Clinton by about 2 to 3 points. Obama lost all three of these counties against Romney and McCain back in 2008 and 2012. However, all three of these counties voted for Joe Biden by double digits. In fact, it's not only just the so-called liberal counties in the region. Counties like Cherokee County, Forsyth County, and Paulding County, they are all trending heavily towards Joe Biden in 2020, and in the long run, the state of Georgia may look to be a likely, if not safe, state for Joe Biden and the Democrats in the long run. However, right now, according to polling, there's a lot of these college-educated white voters who decided that they'd rather, although they were Republicans, that they'd rather see Joe Biden in office rather than Donald Trump. However, some of these voters, it looks like, may have since changed their mind, according to polling and according to just a lot of these white college-educated voters now saying, you know what, I'm not going to vote for Biden, I'm not going to vote for Trump. They may have voted for Trump in 2016, voted for Biden in 2020, and if you look at the margin, just how razor thin it was, every vote matters, and just right now, according to some of the trends, according to some of the data, it just does not look too good for Joe Biden. Now, going to the map here, I'm going to put it in the lean column. I do believe that Trump will end up winning the state by about 3 points, underperforming polls, but nonetheless still winning the state of Georgia, a third flip off of this map. Now going to the state of North Carolina. First off, we're going to again look at the polling here. So in the state of North Carolina here, you see a remarkably similar trend. Donald Trump has led every single poll against Joe Biden, though he's not necessarily at 50% in all the polls. This was the only state where Trump won the election, but did not carry the majority. Now, a state where Trump won in 2020, I really doubt will go for Biden in 2024. Biden is playing defense, not offense. If you look at some of the trends here, again, Democrats did quite well in the liberal areas of the state. Wake County, Mecklenburg County, as well as Greensboro, the three largest Democratic cities, especially the Charlotte and Wake County. These are the most important regions of the state for Democrats. However, there's a lot of rural areas in the state with that are quite populated that border the states of South Carolina and Tennessee. These are the areas where Democrats typically they don't have to win those regions. Obviously, they're not going to, but they need to at least keep it close. And actually, Trump actually did quite well in some of those counties, especially in this district over here. This is a predominantly black district that is more rural. This district trended quite towards the Republican Party, trended towards Donald Trump. And those are not the type of margins here for that a Democrat wants in the state of North Carolina. And just a lot of these areas, for example, Clackamas County as well as Union County, these are areas that could end up spelling trouble for Biden in 2024. They trended towards Biden in 2020. They might be reverting back to the Republicans in 2024. Overall, just based on the fact that Biden did not win the state in 2020, and the fact that the polling looks so bad for him, I'm going to put it in the lean column, though Trump could even win the state by a likely margin. Now going to the state of Minnesota here, I'm going to pull up the Minnesota polls, which is one of the swing states that actually look better for Democrats according to the polling. Not a single poll actually has Donald Trump ahead, though the polls are generally within the margin of error. But in 2020, we see that this was one of the states where Joe Biden actually outperformed Hillary Clinton by more than 5 points. Specifically in the Minneapolis region, where Biden really ran up the turnout and also ran up the numbers. A great example is Anoka County. Anoka County, previously a reliably Republican county, now going really, Trump did not even carry 50% of the vote here. And generally, the rural areas of the state, they are still significant, but they're not conservative enough, and their numbers are not good enough for the Republicans to win the state just based on those rural numbers. They have to do quite well. For example, winning Dakota County, winning Washington County, winning Anoka County by double digits to end up actually winning the state of Minnesota, because Minneapolis as well as Ramsey County just give Democrats about 400,000 net votes. And right now, it just does not look like that Republicans have enough rural support to overtake Biden's lead. I do believe that it will be closer to a 3 or 4 point victory for Biden and not a likely margin. But still, I'm going to give this state over to Joe Biden by a lean margin. Map, you can see that Joe Biden is at 221 electoral votes to Donald Trump at 268. Those numbers are remarkably concerning for Joe Biden because Trump only needs one of the remaining 4 states to carry the presidential election. Now going to the state of New Hampshire here, according to some of the polling, you can see Trump has not actually led in a single poll. Haley has led in 2 polls, but we generally see that Trump is behind in every single poll, and that Biden consistently leads by about 7 over Donald Trump, a comparable margin to his lead back in 2020. The big problem here, white college-educated voters are a predominant group in the state. The state used to be relatively conservative. Now, because of the Trump era, it has swung remarkably towards Joe Biden. You can see that Nikki Haley, Trump's challenger in the Republican primaries, actually secured 43% of the vote, and many voters in the state, they would have voted for Haley, but not for Donald Trump. And this is the perfect state for someone like Joe Biden to end up actually winning, even in an environment that looks pretty concerning for Joe Biden. I'm going to put the state in the lean Democratic column, meaning that Joe Biden will probably win by about 4%. And I'm also going to put Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District in the Joe Biden column because it is somewhat similar to the state of New Hampshire. It is college educated and has swung heavily towards Joe Biden because of resentment towards Donald Trump. Spot 3, the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. I'm going to start off with Wisconsin. With its 10 electoral votes, is enough to put Donald Trump over 270 electoral votes. Now, first off, according to polling, you can see a big problem for Joe Biden. He has not led us in a single poll, and only one poll has Joe Biden and Donald Trump tied at 49%, and that was taken in January, which is the last poll that was which is the earliest poll that is shown on this website, FiveThirtyEight. And according to the numbers, you can just see a big problem for Joe Biden. He only won the state by 20,000 votes. and really there are only 2 Democratic vote-producing counties in the entire state that is able to provide significant amounts of votes for Joe Biden. That being the counties of Dane County, where Madison is located, and as well as that Milwaukee County, where the city of Milwaukee is located. Both of these counties in total generate about 350,000 to 400,000 net votes for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. But there's a lot of rural areas in the state. The rural areas aren't as conservative, but if you look at 2008 or 2012, this district over here was largely blue, now it is largely red. And we look at the 3 counties that Donald Trump really underran the previous Republican numbers and end up costing him the state, the wild counties, Waukesha County, Washington County, as well as Ozaukee County. The most significant of which is Waukesha County. This is the perfect area for Democrats to make inroads. You see that Joe Biden lost the county by 56,000 votes, or by about 21 percentage points. But in 2012, Obama lost the county by more than a 2-to-1 margin, as Romney carried 67% against Obama, who carried just 32% of the vote in Waukesha County. And that is a big problem here for Donald Trump. However, elsewhere you see the rural areas, Romney lost the state by 6 because he was not able to win the rural areas. Obama carried more than half of the counties in the state of Wisconsin. In 2020, you can see there's a sea of red. Generally speaking, you see that these rural areas, they don't really net much votes for Donald Trump, but one county after another, these areas end up adding up, especially because if Democrats aren't able to run up enough turnout in areas like Dane County or areas like Milwaukee County, which they probably won't compared to his numbers in 2020, there's a really realistic problem for Joe Biden, especially considering Hillary Clinton lost the state of Wisconsin despite pulling up by 6 on election day. Right now, Joe Biden is down by at least 2 according to the polls. So if you look at it from that perspective, I'm going to give Trump the state of Wisconsin by about 3% over Joe Biden. Right now, Joe Biden is stuck at 226 electoral votes to Donald Trump at 278, which means Donald Trump is reelected a second non-consecutive term to the United States presidency. But now going to the state of Michigan here. Again, in Michigan, Biden has trailed Donald Trump in every single poll but one, which had him tied with Donald Trump, and this was an insider poll by the Republican Party nonetheless. Now, if you look at the state, Joe Biden won the state by 3, and won the state by more than 154,000 votes. However, there are a lot of problems for the Democrats. First out, there was a lot of uncommitted voters in the state of Michigan, where 13% of the voters, especially in areas like Detroit and Washtenaw County, voted uncommitted. That is especially significant, for example, in an area like Dearborn, where there's a lot of Arab Americans who really resent Joe Biden's performance in terms of the Israel-Hamas war. There was a lot of uncommitted voters in areas like Dearborn, and Detroit has one of the largest, if not the largest, Arab American population of any U.S. city, which means there's a lot of voters there who overwhelmingly approved of Joe Biden back in 2020, who are now considering to either vote for Donald Trump or stay home. Considering this was a state that was decided by less than 3, that could be significant. However, Joe Biden does have some areas that he could improve in, specifically 2 counties, Oakland County and Kent County. If you look at some of the trends here, Kent trended towards Democrats by 9, the first time Democrats have won the county in about 30 years. And if you look at Oakland County here, a lot of votes, more than 700,000 votes. That's comparable to the area of Wayne, where Detroit is located. Joe Biden won the county by 6%, more than Hillary Clinton's number. Despite this, however, the Republicans could still run up the Republican numbers, and also Detroit and Ann Arbor, where we saw so many uncommitted votes, that could be significant in terms of really demonstrating how really weak Joe Biden is in the state, and how just some of these minor shifts of voters just staying home could end up helping Joe Biden. However, there is a lot of suburban counties in the state, and that is where Donald Trump is going to lack. And there's also a lot of white college-educated voters in areas like Oakland to end up perhaps mitigating the problems that Joe Biden has in a county like Wayne. When all is considered, I do believe Trump will overperform his 2020 number, but not enough to win the state. I do believe that Joe Biden at this point in time will win the state of Michigan by a tilt margin. However, that does not really matter in terms of the electoral college map, considering that Donald Trump has already won the presidential election. finally, in the state of Pennsylvania. In the state of Pennsylvania here, if you look at polls, it is closer between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Sure, Biden still trails in most of the polls, but at least it is still mostly within the margin of error. If you look at the 2020 margin, Joe Biden won the state by 1.2% over Donald Trump, a relatively small number considering he was expected to win the state by 7, according to the polling. Now, one of the areas that Joe Biden did really run up the numbers in is the Philadelphia suburbs. Sure, he actually underperformed in Philadelphia County, but he did more than enough to make up for it in areas like Chester County, Delaware County, Montgomery County, and Bucks County, the 4 counties that surround Philadelphia and are extremely populated. This is why Donald Trump ultimately lost the state. Now, one of the areas that Trump could run up the numbers is actually surprisingly in Philadelphia. If turnout is lower in Philadelphia, and if he is able to again get that Republican trend, which has been happening for a couple of elections, perhaps Donald Trump could end up winning the state. Now, one of the areas that Trump really needs to be concerned about is areas like Westmoreland, where it is more exurban and Trump could end up losing some support. However, he has a lot of opportunities to make up for that. One of those opportunities is the rural areas. He's going to run it up in the rural regions, and the voter turnout in some of those areas, especially of exhaustion of Joe Biden, might very well end up helping him end up winning the state. Now, what it's going to come down to is just how many Democrats decide to stay home because Joe Biden is older and many voters question his mental acuity. Even Democrats do so. So ultimately, it will be decided by voter turnout. I think Trump's voter turnout is going to be quite high, but if Joe Biden can also turn out a similar number of voters, perhaps Biden will end up winning the state. Ultimately, however, with just Joe Biden's really low approval rating, and in fact that Joe Biden is polling so badly across the United States, it's hard to see how Biden ends up actually winning the state of Pennsylvania. In the end, I do project a Trump victory in the state, but by just around 1% or a tilt margin. Now it is time for the summary. In summary, I do believe that Donald Trump will win, though this race is still very competitive. Joe Biden currently holds 241 electoral votes in my latest projection against Donald Trump's 297 electoral votes. However, that does not mean Joe Biden is out of the race yet. If he flips the two tilt Republican states, which I expect will go for Donald Trump by around 1%, the states of Arizona and Pennsylvania, then he would be at 271 electoral votes, and Joe Biden will win the presidential election again. Ultimately, we'll have to wait and see. As of right now, though, I do project a Trump victory, though this election could still be very tight. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.